The Discovery, Chapter 7, Part 2. Well, that happened, David thought out loud.
I know, I'm sorry, David. I wish I could say ponies here were better than that, but clearly some aren't.
Midnight replied sadly. That's alright, that's my fault. I should have listened to you earlier, David replied with a smirk.
I did warn you.
Midnight said through a thin smile. Well, anyways, thanks for standing up for me. I really appreciate that, David said with a genuine smile.
Of course, David. I wouldn't let some jerk like that talk about my friend that way.
Thanks, Mid. Just be careful next time, though. I don't want you to get into any trouble because of me.
I guess you're right. Wait, what did you just call me?
She asked, tilting her head. Mid? I just thought it was easier to say than your full name. Why? I mean, does it bother you? I won't call you that if it's an issue.
No, I mean, it's kinda nice. No ponies called me Mid in forever. I miss that a little bit.
She smiled warmly at him. Well, alright then, Mid. I don't think I'm gonna find any fish or meat here, and even if we could, I don't think today would be a good day to eat any of that, so we'll need something vegetarian. Pizza's vegetarian, right? What about pizza? I haven't had that in forever. There has to be a place in Canterlot that has a decent pizza.
Actually, that sounds great. I know a place.
Midnight took off with David trailing close behind. They made their way through Canterlot proper, before Midnight found a small street and trotted through, weaving in between stands and vendors selling all kinds of exotic goods. Mid, where exactly are we going? This looks more like a market than anything else. Are you planning on making the pizza? David asked, with a puzzled look on his face as he dodged, ducked, dipped, dived, and dodged his way through the crowded street.
It's a hole-in-the-wall kind of place. You just need to know where to look. Now, where was it? Oh, there!
Midnight shouted over the commotion in the street. She pointed at a small building with one large window and a sign that read, Open. Looking through the front window, David could only see a few small booths and a small counter with an older-looking pony wearing an apron covered in grease. No pony else was inside. Are you sure about this place, Mid? It looks kinda deserted, David cautiously asked.
Trust me, this place is awesome.
Midnight pushed the door open and walked inside. A small bell rang upon her entry, getting the stallion at the front counter's attention. David followed close behind, causing the stallion to sink back in his chair slightly. To his credit, he didn't run away or freak out, though his voice was a little shaky when he spoke. Good afternoon, miss, and, sir? How can I help you two?
Just getting some lunch. What kind of pizza do you have? It's been so long since I've been here.
Midnight said with a happy smile. Well, we've got all kinds. Cheese, hay fry. Oh, I make a mean cucumber crust. The stallion began listing pizza types, quickly forgetting his previous nervousness. As the stallion droned on about all the pizza types he could make, Midnight leaned towards David and quietly spoke.
So, what kind do you want?
Just a cheese pizza's fine by me. I don't think this place is gonna have pepperoni, David said, mimicking Midnight's actions.
Fair enough. I'll see if we can get some from a Griffin shop on the way back. We'll just take a large cheese pizza.
Midnight spoke, cutting off the pony behind the desk before he could list any more options. Oh, alright. One large cheese pizza coming right up. That'll be 5 bits, and then you two can have a seat at the booth over there, he said, pointing at the booth by the window. Midnight retrieved the requested bits from her saddlebags and levitated them onto the counter. She turned and walked to the booth to find David already sitting down, waiting for her. As she hopped onto the seat, she gave David a bright smile.
I haven't been here in years. The last time was when my dad took me for my 10th birthday. It's still exactly the same as I remember it. It certainly has a rustic look to it, doesn't it?
David said, his eyes scanning the small dining area.
Oh, that reminds me. You asked earlier about why I joined the Night Guard, right? Before I had to go see Princess Luna?
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Why did you?
Well, I was an orphan. Both my parents died in an accident when I was just a foal. Once I went to the orphanage, I was adopted by 2 Thestrals. They knew I wasn't nocturnal and tried their best to change their lives to suit me better. But I still had to live a lot of my life at night. Originally, I enlisted as a medic in the Royal Guard, but after the Changeling attack...
For a split second, David saw the slightest bit of a sad twinkle in Midnight's sapphire eyes. It only lasted until she blinked, and it was gone.
I decided to take a vacant spot in the Night Guard. I was used to staying up all night, after all.
Midnight finished.
Wow, I'm so sorry about your parents, but it seems like you had very good adoptive parents, though, so that's good. Are they still around? Thank you. And yes, they're both still around. Although they moved to Ponyville a couple of years ago. Got tired of Canterlot and wanted to move somewhere quieter. What happened with the Changeling attack, though? Twilight told me a little about it, but nothing from a soldier's perspective.
David asked. Midnight's ears splayed back immediately.
The Changeling attack was painful. Honestly, I don't really like to talk about it.
Midnight said.
Oh, fair enough. Sorry to bring it up.
David apologized.
It's fine, David. Don't worry about it.
The conversation died for a bit before a realization dawned on her.
What are you doing, Mid? You're supposed to be getting him to open up too, not just give him your life story. Why does he have to be so cute? I keep forgetting I'm supposed to help him. I just keep wanting him to hold me like this morning, like when he used to hold me.
Midnight shook her head free of those impure thoughts and reignited the conversation.
So what about you? What were your folks like? Oh, that's a long story. Well, Mom died when I was in the military, of cancer. She had it back when I was in high school, but she beat it. Didn't want to let her go, though. Came back with a vengeance a few years later, and she was gone within a couple of months. That hit us all pretty hard. She was the kindest person you'd ever meet. She did so much for me. More than I ever really realized at the time. She used to pick me up from school every day. She made me breakfast in bed when I was sick, and she would cheer me on when I was on the football team. All while she was going through chemo.
David paused in thought for a moment.
I actually remember one time when I was playing, I was the halfback, so I had to get the ball and run it into the end zone to win the game. We were down 42-39, so this last touchdown was what we needed to win. I must have been stronger back then because I broke 4 tackles when I charged through the line. I think there were 3 guys all trying to pull me down, but I kept pushing. I wanted to make her proud, you know? Somehow I made it and scored the game-winning touchdown. All my buddies rushed around me, picked me up, and carried me around while cheering my name. I remembered being so excited as I looked into the stands. I saw her, jumping up and down, cheering for me, screaming my name. She had lost her hair at this point and had an oxygen mask, but she didn't care. She just wanted me to be happy. She was the strongest woman I ever knew. Thing is, it's kinda hard to be strong when you can't even move. Those last few weeks were the hardest. She couldn't even leave her bed, and she slowly withered away. She was so strong, but to see her like that, I miss her.
David paused, a sad frown adorning his face while he recollected the past. Midnight sat in silence. A sad smile covered her face as she rubbed his arm with a hoof, urging him to continue. My dad was great when he was around. I know it wasn't his fault. He worked 3 jobs to support us after Mom got sick. He wouldn't say it, and he tried damn hard not to show it, but he took Mom's passing hard. Probably harder than all of us. He always had a thing for big speeches. He always used to tell me that I would make it big, that I'd find a cure for cancer, or I'd end world hunger. I think he thought that if he inspired me enough, that I'd be successful. He lost that spark after Mom died. He didn't care much for anything after that. When I told him I was joining Nebula and I probably wouldn't see him again, he just said, "Be safe." I don't blame him. It was probably all he could do to not scream at me for just leaving like that. It's kinda weird to think about it. That conversation was over 100 years ago. But for me, it was just a few months ago. Midnight sat in silence. She wanted David to open up and hopefully reveal the source of his nightmares. But the amount of guilt in his voice made it seem like it could have been coming from just about everything in his past.
David hates himself for leaving his family behind. That much is clear.
She thought to herself.
Why did you join Nebula? If you knew it would hurt your father so much, though.
Midnight asked, as delicately as she could. David chuckled. Would you believe me if I said I thought it'd make him proud? Midnight turned her head, a confused expression creeping on her face. I thought at the time that joining Nebula and going to Andromeda would put me in the history books. That I would be doing something great. Like Dad always said I would. I guess that's just the mind of a dumb 23-year-old.
I don't know. It sounds like you were trying to make your father proud. Even if it wasn't in the way he might have wanted, the sentiment was still there.
Midnight said, hopeful that some encouragement would make David feel a little better. Before David could respond, the stallion brought their pizza to the table, along with 2 plates. He expertly slid the dish off of his back onto the table and placed the plates on the table. Bon appetit, he said as he bowed and walked away. Deciding to hold off on continuing the conversation, David grabbed a pre-cut piece of pizza and handed it to Midnight, who took it in her magic before grabbing another and biting into the delicious, cheesy goodness. The taste was indescribable, easily the best pizza he'd ever had. Maybe even good enough to drown out those painful memories, for a short while. Midnight and David left the small restaurant with full bellies and lazy smiles. The Canterlot Pizzeria was hidden away from the world, but it sure did make good pizza. As Midnight and David traveled back through the busy streets of Canterlot, one thing was apparent on Midnight's mind. David had been through a lot. Despite everything he told her, Midnight was still far from finding out what exactly was causing him to have the nightmares.
Maybe if I just ask him directly? No, Luna said that was a bad idea. For all I know, it might just make things worse for him.
Midnight? David asked, a concerned look on his face.
What? Oh, yes?
You alright? You were just kinda staring off into space for a minute there.
Oh, sorry. I kinda got lost in thought.
Midnight apologized.
Oh, you're good. I was just gonna ask where you wanted to go next.
David said, a warm smile on his face.
Well, I don't really know. Any place in particular that you want to go?
Not really. To be honest, I'm getting a little tired of the staring.
Staring?
Midnight asked, turning around to find dozens of ponies staring at the two of them, mouths agape, and a wide variety of emotions circulating through the crowd.
When did we draw a crowd again? Jeez, I really was lost in thought. What are you all staring at?
Midnight addressed the crowd. Lady, do you not see the thing standing next to you? One of the bystanders called back.
First off, he's not a thing. He's a human. And secondly, why don't you—
Midnight started, only to be cut off by David's hand on her shoulder. It's alright, Mid. I can deal with this, David said. He turned to the crowd who stared at him in silence. Okay, public speaking. Fuck, he thought to himself. Listen, I know you're all curious as to what or who I am. My name is David. I didn't decide to crash land here. I was just trying to go home. Something went wrong and now I'm here. If you're worried about me hurting you or your families, then you shouldn't. I don't want to hurt anyone. Then why'd you have to come here? To Canterlot? A voice rang out from the crowd. I didn't have a choice. This is just where I crashed, and Princess Celestia was kind enough to allow me to stay. David answered. Well, you're not living with her now, so why are you still here? Another voice called out. I don't have anywhere else to go. Look, I'm not your enemy. I'm just trying to make the best out of a bad situation, David countered. The last weird creature to invade our lands took our magic and nearly destroyed Equestria. Why should we trust you or anything you say? A burly unicorn called out from the crowd. Because I don't have any magical powers, I can't take magic or fly or anything like that. I'm pretty much the same as an earth pony, David said, slightly annoyed.
How do we know that there isn't an army waiting to invade as soon as we let our guard down?
Another pony said.
Because I don't even know what planet I'm on! What part of crashed here unintentionally do you not get? I didn't mean to land here!
David reasoned with much more annoyance.
Fucking hell, maybe I should have just kept my mouth shut. This is going downhill fast. Why are the ponies in Canterlot such dicks?
David thought to himself.
How can we trust your word? For all we know, everything you say could be a lie. You've given us no reason to trust you.
A mare in the back of the crowd called out.
I don't know how you want me to prove it to you. I've spent the last 3 weeks living with Princess Celestia and Luna. They trusted me enough to talk to me and let me stay. If you're all so much smarter and wiser than the Princess of the goddamn Sun, then by all means, I'll leave and go live in a cave somewhere.
David finished with a wave of his arms. A stunned silence filled the air as David's words sunk in. Several ponies' eyes fell to the floor, and some uncomfortably shuffled under his gaze. David waited expectantly for an answer, but received nothing. After several tense seconds, David shook his head and turned around to Midnight. His face was a mix of annoyance and disappointment as he walked over to her. The crowd began to quickly disperse, and as ponies started to leave, David caught the words of one last heckler. At least the rest of its group died in the crash, so we only have to worry about one. That struck a nerve in David's heart and mind. His feet came to a screeching halt on the cold pavement, and before Midnight could say a single word of caution, David was rounding on his feet towards the fading crowd. A red-hot rage filled his mind, blocking his senses out to anything other than the words of that one last heckler. David's anger boiled over any kind of rational thought residing inside of his mind, and before he even knew it, he angrily addressed the remnants of the crowd.
What did you just say?
He called out. Several heads turned towards David as he angrily approached the crowd. His eyes quickly scanned the area the offending words came from. After only a moment, he saw a golden-yellow Pegasus standing in front of a small group of ponies. At David's glare, the small group backed away from the lone Pegasus between them and David. The pony in question looked to his group to find them glancing back between him and David. He nervously pointed to himself with a me expression as his gaze returned to the clearly furious human.
Yeah, you! What did you say?
David repeated, his voice laced with anger. I don't... He started.
Don't bullshit me!
David interrupted as he walked closer to the pony in question. The heckler backed away in fear at the sudden display of aggression. David closed in fast, and before he knew it, he was towering over the Pegasus with an expression of pure hate on his face. He trailed off.
You what, huh? Let me make one thing clear, asshole. You can dislike me all you want, but you do not talk about my friends like that. They were good people. You got a problem with me, you take it up with me, but don't you dare talk about them!
David shouted.
David!
Midnight's voice rang out, drawing his attention from the Pegasus cowering under him.
What? That's enough! Let's go! Now!
Midnight commanded, using her magic to physically pull David away from the other ponies. Midnight dragged David several feet before he found his footing and began to walk on his own. The surrounding ponies stared in a mix of fear and awe as the duo passed through the quickly dispersing crowd, and before long they were out of sight. Midnight led David into a small alley where she turned around and addressed him.
David, what was that about?
She asked as delicately as she could.
What? You did pretty much the same thing with that pony from earlier.
David replied sourly.
I know, but that was one pony and me being irrational, not a crowd of 50. Not to mention I'm a pony, so me acting like that isn't really a big deal. You, on the other hoof, aren't. After that little speech you gave to let them get you like that and make you lash out, they aren't going to forget that easily, David. You shouldn't have done that. You really, really shouldn't have done that. We should have just left.
Midnight said while pacing back and forth.
Well, fuck them, especially that asshole. He has no idea who he's talking about. Those guys were my friends and they deserved better than that.
David said, angrily clawing its way into his voice once more.
I know that. I agree with you. But if you want to make a life here, you need to let some things go, David. It's not fair. None of it's fair. But that's just how life is sometimes. I know that it was horrible and your friends deserve better than that. But do you really think that that was the best way to honor them?
David was silent for a few minutes before he sighed deeply.
You're right. I shouldn't have done that. It's just they were my friends. I can deal with being disliked, but when he said that shit, all I saw was red.
David admitted sadly.
It's okay. I understand. Just please don't do that again. If you feel like you're going to snap like that, then just walk away from now on. Deal?
Midnight said with a small smile.
Deal. So, think I fucked up my chances of fitting in here?
David asked.
Well, they're not attacking you, so I guess that's a start. Probably the best reaction we're gonna get at the moment. I'm just sorry that they're so stupid. You deserve better, David.
Midnight said, offering a hopeful smile. David mutely nodded and turned to leave, with Midnight sadly following behind. Yeah, the best way to deal with situations is to just walk away from them. There ain't no point in arguing, it's just gonna make things worse most of the time. You know, it's also something I don't get sometimes. Some people argue about some of the most stupid shit. It's like, are you really that bored? Anyway, let's get on to our reasonable donators. Top donators: Bobcat GJF, Zar630, J Tinman, Only One Thing, Sura Orion, and Iron Sky. Darkside, Raiden, Narwhals, Black Moonheart, Pastel Skies, Austin Roland, Stu Hex, Sword Brother and Orchard, Omicron Lyre, Will, Chris, Twinkie, Ridesoul, Badass Waffle, Shadow Moon, Luigi88, Chancellor Crust, Big Smoke 369, and many more fantastic people. Thank you all so much for watching this video and live life to the fullest.